All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a very good morning and welcome to In Dialogue with Youth. My name is Nadia and I'll be your host for this morning. Thanks very much for taking the time off to be here with us. Now, to start us off, let me run through the program very briefly with you so you know what you're in for. You can look at the screen. Now, we'll start off the day with a very exciting talk by Mr. Peter Schwartz. He is an energy futurist and currently the Senior VP of Salesforce.com. We'll then conduct an electronic poll, and this is where I'll need all your participation. So at this portion, you can use your handphones. Joining us after the short break will be Minister Ishwaran, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office and Second Minister for Home Affairs and Trade and Industry. Then we will have 3 schools who will share with us their thoughts and perspectives on energy. Thereafter, Minister Ishwaran and Peter Schwartz will share their thoughts. Please also take that opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, any burning questions that you want to know about the energy sector. That's where you can save it and you can hurl it at them. Mr. Schwartz looks very ready. And finally, we will round up the event with our inaugural Energy Industry Scholarship Award presentation ceremony. The 7th Singapore International Energy Week brings together a robust lineup of the world's leading events to provide insights and trends across the energy spectrum of oil and gas, clean and renewable energy, and energy infrastructure financing in 1 week, 1 location. As such, we are very grateful to have with us Mr. Peter Schwartz, Futurist and Senior Vice President for Global Government Relations and Strategic Planning of Salesforce.com, to come on stage and share his insights to us. Mr. Schwartz, please.
Good morning. I must say I'm really delighted to be here and see all of you out here. I really welcome the opportunity to engage in a conversation with all of you. What I want to talk about this morning is energy in its broadest sense, but what the real challenge of our future is. As was mentioned, I've spent most of my life helping organizations think about the future, but I began as an engineer. My background is I'm an astronautical engineer, literally a rocket scientist. It's perhaps the only virtue of my degree is I actually get to say I'm a rocket scientist. And I did work on Project Apollo. And for any of you who doubt that we went to the moon, we actually did go to the moon. I was there for the launch. I wasn't there for the landing, so I cannot swear they came back. But I was there for the launch. I did see them go. So for me, that was the challenge of my youth. I was born in 1946. And I remember the moment very well in 1957 when the first satellite went up, the Sputnik went up. And I remember one of my friends from across the street came running across the street and said, the Russians just put up a satellite. And it was a world-changing moment. And suddenly, the space age was being born. And like a lot of young people at the time, and I was one of those, I dreamt of I wanted to be an astronaut. But by the time I got out of school, unfortunately, the astronaut market had dried up, and I was my first mistake about the future, I must say. Having said that, every age has its own challenges. You know, if you go back to the 30s, it was the challenge of the Depression. In the 40s, it was the war. For us, it was the space race, and it was getting to the moon. It was being able to explore the universe. And that option is still wide open. In fact, Singapore is involved already in building microsatellites that are beginning to explore the Earth from space and do interesting research in Earth orbit. But the great challenge of our time, I think perhaps the greatest challenge we've ever faced, is the challenge of sustainability. And the reason is very straightforward. And, you know, we all live very, very well. Singapore is a very rich society. Most of you live relatively comfortably. I do in the United States. In the world today, there are about somewhere on the order of 2 billion people who live as we do. Another maybe 2 billion people who are not too far behind. And then another 3 billion people who are just barely climbing out of poverty around the world. They live in Africa, Latin America, big parts of Asia, India, China, your neighbors, Indonesia. And over the next 30 years, another 2 billion people will be joining us on the planet. So that by mid-century, we'll have a population somewhere around 9 billion. And what that means is that over the next 4, 5, billion people are all going to want to live like us, right? And the implication of that is rather profound. They want all the benefits of a modern society: clean water, electricity, good health, transportation, education, prosperity, all those things that we have the benefits of today in relatively developed societies. But there's a single challenge that lies behind that, and that is, of course, the challenge of how do we make all those people rich without destroying the planet. That is, how do we provide them enough energy? How do we provide them enough food? How do we provide enough water, and so on? Good housing. How do we do all that without consuming the Earth's resources and depleting the planet, and without producing so much pollution that we can't breathe, see Beijing today? Or even worse, how do we transform it in such a way that we do not shatter the climate of the Earth? Now, in fact, after I graduated from school, I went to a place called Stanford Research Institute, which was a big research institute associated with Stanford University, and actually did the first global climate assessment in 1977. Which is when we were actually studying the future of the climate. And I used my fluid mechanics skills to actually, fluid dynamics, to build the first global climate models, to look at how the climate was changing. And we came to a rather dramatic conclusion, that indeed the world's climate is changing. And it's changing in part for natural reasons, that happens regularly, but also for human intervention. All that carbon dioxide that we're pumping out of our cars, our power plants, our factories, and so on, and that we have been doing since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, is changing the climate of the Earth. That carbon dioxide in the atmosphere absorbs energy, and that energy has to go somewhere. And it goes into changing the climate. It warms places. Some places end up cooler, but it doesn't happen evenly. And in fact, what actually happens is that what the climate does is it doesn't change in a nice, smooth pattern like peanut butter spread over the world. It changes in very complex ways. And so some places will have severe storms, some places it'll be droughts, some places it'll be floods, some places it may even get cooler, some places it'll get much hotter. What's going to happen is a climate that is unstable. And we can do something about that. We caused it, and we can stop it. Now, it's already happening, so we can't stop it before we see some of those changes. They're already underway. But the forces that are shaping it are largely man-made. They're a function of economic development, of people getting richer and consuming vast amounts more energy, and not in particularly efficient ways around the world. So the challenge, therefore, is how can we change that trajectory of carbon dioxide? How can we slow the growth of carbon dioxide while still making the next 3, 4, 5 billion people rich? That is the challenge that all of you are going to have to solve. Now, fortunately, we can imagine lots of ways that that can be dealt with, both in the short and medium term. And there are a lot of technology options, a lot of options beyond technology that we can begin to tackle. And many of those are being addressed right here in Singapore. The last couple of days, the Energy Advisory Board was meeting with Minister Schwartz and looking at the research program, policies, and so on, in things like renewable energy, in new energy storage technology, new materials, photovoltaics, biotechnology for energy, and so on. So there's an active research program already underway. But let's think about the specifics of what that might mean, because there's plenty of room for everybody to play here. You can think about many different elements. I mean, we tend to think about it purely in scientific and technology terms: more efficient production, more efficient consumption, new energy sources, and so on. But Singapore has another great opportunity, which will afford architects, city planners, designers, building designers, and so on, great opportunities. Because of course, you're still changing, developing, getting richer still, and over the next 20 or 30 years, you will be continuing to develop the city of Singapore. How you develop it will actually affect what kind of energy consumption you have. Is it going to be a city that rewards mass transit and walking, or is everybody going to have a car? Right? And those are two different scenarios. If everybody's driving a car, not only are we all going to be stuck in traffic, it took me a while to get here this morning. That's why I just walked in here. It took a bit longer than we expected, right? Little long lines trying to get in here. We'll all be stuck in traffic, or we'll be producing a lot of pollution from all those automobiles. unless those automobiles are electric cars or hybrid cars, because that affords us another opportunity. But the first opportunity is basic urban design. And you're doing research in that area, and there's an enormous amount now happening, not only in Singapore, but around the world, in how we design our cities. Because cities are actually the place where we are most efficient. Most people don't realize this. The most efficient city in the world is Manhattan. And the reason is everybody walks. Because you can't, and nobody drives their own cars. They don't have cars. It's too dense. You can't afford parking. The traffic is so bad, you don't bother. So you take taxis or subways or buses, or you walk. And it's all very vertical, and all the buildings are well insulated, and they're very close to each other. So Manhattan is hyper-dense, hyper-vertical, and extremely efficient. Now, nobody planned it that way. That wasn't the intention, but that's how it developed. And fortunately, in hindsight, it turns out to be a pretty good design, as compared to a place like, let's say, Los Angeles, which is incredibly widespread. You can't do anything without an automobile. Everybody lives in their little mini mansions, needs lots of air conditioning, lots of square footage, lots of room, and several cars for every member of the family. So this is as the opposite of what is good design from an energy and environmental perspective. So the first opportunity is all you guys who want to be architects, building designers, and so on, is the basic layout of the city. The second big opportunity has to do with how we consume energy. Now, we've already seen enormous changes in the last 30 or 40 years as a result of science and technology. In the 1970s, most cars were vastly more polluting. And they've become much more efficient and produce much less by way of emissions. The new technology attached to the automobile and more efficient engines have made that we've actually reduced almost 95% of the pollution. That was good policy, mandating emissions controls on automobiles, but the net result in many of the urban regions of the world, particularly in the richer parts of the world, including Singapore, the air quality has improved enormously. And that was the steady improvement of technology of automobiles. Well, there's still a lot more that we can do with that. But policy has led to more efficient refrigerators, air conditioners, television sets, computers, data centers. Every way in which we consume energy, we have now gotten more efficient. And every one of those is driven in part by policy, by price expectations, and by essentially the design aspirations and cleverness of engineers and scientists wanting to do a better job of things. So what we have seen is an enormous improvement in the efficiency of the technology that we have for use in our buildings, in our factories, and in our transport. So the first area where there's still a lot of room to go is efficiency of every technology that consumes energy and, frankly, other resources, water, materials, food, and so on. So much more efficiency. That's number one. The second opportunity, obviously, is in better energy sources. And first of all, just better use of what we already have, more efficient use of natural gas, for example, better production technologies for that. So just simply getting better at what we already have is a good thing. But beyond that, there are many options now for really clean energy. And the most obvious one here in Singapore is solar photovoltaics, right? The world has seen an explosion in the last decade or so of use of solar PVs all over the world. China did us all a favor by dramatically dropping the price. They basically increased production enormously, put a lot of pressure on producers of solar panels all over the world. And that's a good thing, because it's forcing them to innovate. It's forcing them to come up with better technologies, cheaper technologies, and so on. And that's happening in the United States, in Europe, in Japan, in China, and here in Singapore. And what kinds of things does that mean? Well, first of all, it means things like new materials. So lots of opportunity in new materials for energy production. And the most obvious place is PVs, but I'll come back to that in other areas. So the science of materials, the engineering of materials. So that's one big area. The other is the basic design of the system. Much of the effort in solar power actually goes into the whole assembly of the system, the integration, and so on, all of what's called the balance of plant. Lots of opportunities there. And then in the whole systems integration, how you put this together in a big system, that's another opportunity. So at every level of that, there are significant opportunities for improving solar power, reducing the cost, increasing the efficiency, capturing more sun, and turning it into more energy. So that's another whole realm where Singapore can play an important role, both for your own benefit, but for the world as well. Another arena, which I find very exciting, is biotechnology for energy. Nature is a great energy converter, right, takes sunlight and produces plant life with it, right? And all that stuff grows from resources in the ground, and sunlight produces energy and photosynthesis, and we get trees and plants and so on. Well, we can capture the value of that energy, transform that biological material into a variety of fuels. And today, there's a whole new arena called synthetic biology that is dealing with biology as if it was an engineering problem. That is taking the molecules that create natural systems that we understand and learning how to use those molecules in very clever ways to produce new kinds of fuels. So in Brazil, for example, they're taking sugar cane, putting them through a catalytic process and producing, in fact, a biocatalytic process and producing diesel fuel directly from sugar cane. And it's the first large-scale pilots. We'll be doing lots more. But what that implies is that the biologists have an equally important role to play in the future of energy. And I can even imagine the day when we do biological construction, when we grow materials biologically. Imagine this building as if it was a giant redwood tree, right? Growing buildings. Well, that may seem like science fiction, but the truth is we're learning how to use biology like engineering. And so bioengineering for purposes of energy production, for efficiency, for even construction begins to be imaginable. So the biologists have something to contribute there. But now you take all that biological stuff and you got to convert it to things. Well, that's the chemists, the chemical engineers, and so on. So there's room for the chemists to play and the chemical engineers to look at how we take all those biological materials and convert it. And of course, the chemists have another place to play. That is, in emissions and things like coal and so on, the ideal thing is that if we're going to continue to use coal, and unfortunately we are for quite some time, what we want to do is capture the CO2 coming out of there and convert it either to useful products or find ways to sequester it underground. And so this is called carbon capture and sequestration, or carbon capture and use. And it's another place where we can get improved sustainability. So this is an opportunity for all the people who think about the engineering of how do we actually capture pollutants and do something with it, either useful, because pollution is basically a symptom of waste. You just haven't produced and consumed all the material effectively. So can you take what is a waste product and make it a useful product? And that becomes a challenge. So what we're looking for then are the biologists to produce the fuel, the engineers and chemists to take that and transform it into useful energy products, and then to deal with the waste products of that whole process in new ways. So that's another set of opportunities that we can look at for the biologists. And then the physicists and the mechanical engineers, and those, well, there are great opportunities yet in things like nuclear power. There may come a day when, the world today is a little bit skittish about nuclear power thanks to Fukushima. That was a bad event, but it was, we had an opportunity to learn from it. Some bad design choices were made, and as a result, that was a bit of a disaster. But I think we're going to come back to nuclear power because we need it. We need it for reasons of sustainability. So the opportunity to build new generations of nuclear power plants in two very different directions. Some small-scale nuclear power plants. Today's nuclear power plant is about 1,000 megawatts, a gigawatt, if you will. But now we're working on plants that are 50 megawatts, 100, 150. And they afford new kinds of opportunities. For example, floating nuclear power plants. Today, the Russians are actually doing that, moving nuclear power plants up to the Arctic to actually support development in the Arctic. They're moving them up on floating barges. Well, you can imagine a floating nuclear power plant not too far offshore here, providing power, an alternative to natural gas. Now, we're not going to do that soon. It's not going to be 5 years or 10 years, or probably more like 20 or 25 years. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for all of you to play in the design of potentially nuclear power plants. But beyond that lies the great challenge of nuclear fusion. Fusion is the power of the sun, right? That's how solar energy is actually made, is hydrogen fusion. And so today, there are a variety of efforts around the world going on to develop fusion power. In Europe, there is the ITER, which is a huge magnetic bottle to produce fusion, where you essentially compress hydrogen with magnetic forces, and you produce enormous compression, the same thing that happens at the center of the sun, and you fuse hydrogen into producing helium and a whole lot of energy. Well, that's one effort. In California, not far from my home in Berkeley, there at Lawrence Livermore Labs, we're working on laser fusion, giant lasers, 192 lasers with ruby crystals this big, They're amazing. Giant, can you imagine these pink rubies? They're about this cross-section like this and about this long. And there's 192 of them in channels pumping lasers into about a 10-meter sphere, at the center of which is a small deuterium capsule, and it gets hit by those 192 laser beams and gets compressed instantaneously and explodes and produces fusion. Well, today they actually are producing fusion there. They're actually getting a little bit of net energy out. It's still a long way from a practical plant. But the engineering and physics challenges that are enormous and huge opportunities. And now Lockheed, the aerospace company, has come up with a new design for a kind of fusion reactor. In all candor, I don't really understand it yet. Literally, the papers were just published in the last couple of weeks. And it's a smaller scale nuclear fusion reactor. Don't know if it'll work. I don't know if any of these technologies will work, to be honest. But the really big challenge we have in the long run is clean energy in that respect, because solar power probably won't be enough for the whole planet. Wind power probably won't be enough. And we need to get off fossil fuels. So we're going to need something beyond solar and wind. Maybe it's going to be conventional nuclear power. Maybe it'll be fusion power. Or maybe it's something we haven't even imagined yet. Maybe it's biological. But we need something fundamental in the very long run. So we need a really dramatic improvement in fundamental energy technologies in the long run. So bottom line is there's lots of opportunity. This is a huge challenge. I don't think there's any challenge that we've ever faced that is greater than the need for clean energy. And there's opportunity in virtually every field of science and technology, from biology to chemistry to physics, every field of engineering, from chemical engineering, fluid mechanics, and so on, all of it to be able to solve this problem. Now, having seen what we have already accomplished over the last 30 or 40 years of trying to deal with many aspects of this and producing much better solar, much better wind, much more efficient technologies, actually reshaping our cities, I'm extremely optimistic out of our ability to actually address this. And the reason I'm optimistic is the amount of talent that's behind it, the amount of passion, energy that I see not only here, but around the world. Frankly, I deal with young people like all of you in a number of places, and what I see is people beginning to rise to that challenge, seeing the opportunity and wanting to meet that challenge. So I think you are the saviors of the planet. I think you are the ones who are going to build a better future for all of us. And I think you are the ones who are going to create the future that your children will inhabit and find on a much more sustainable planet. Thank you.
Yes, I definitely think it's time for some water. Thank you very much. All right. Now, Peter, you shared with us so many interesting things. And for me, hearing from rubies to rockets, okay? So what would you say is the coolest thing that you've seen in your career so far in the energy sector? I'm not sure you can top rockets, but let's try.
Well, that's a great. Well, I have to say, I think the giant laser fusion was pretty cool. I like big machines, rockets and stuff like that. And the giant laser fusion was actually pretty cool. But at the opposite extreme, I have seen, let me call it, nanoscale devices that are improving the control systems of things at a very, very, very fine-grained level. Literally being able to operate at an individual molecular level and be able to produce new kinds of biological technologies. So at the two extremes, extremely large giant lasers and molecular engineering at the biological level.
Okay, now we also had some examples that you gave, Manhattan, Los Angeles. Now let's try and take it back to our backyard. What are some examples in Singapore or in ASEAN that you think we're doing really well, or maybe we're doing not so well?
Well, look, I think the decision here in Singapore to move toward a lot more solar power is a very good decision. Obviously, this is a relatively sunny part of the world. Unfortunately, wind doesn't work here very well, but solar does. And so we're seeing more and more PVs going into more and more buildings. And virtually every flat roof in Jurong before too long will be covered with PVs, with photovoltaics. And that's what they should be. Every shopping mall, every hospital, every school. I'm not sure about homes. That's another question. But every big flat surface we'll end up with solar panels on it. And I think that's a good thing. And that's clearly where we're headed. I think you're doing a great deal in research. that's extremely interesting, not only in photovoltaics, but one that I'm particularly excited about is energy storage. Because for us to be able to use renewable energy, we have to be able to store it because it's intermittent, right? The sun does not shine at night, so we have to store the sun's energy from the day. And frankly, our batteries are only so-so. They're not very efficient, they're not very light. I have an electric car, right? And it has about 120-kilometer range. I'd like it to have much longer range. That means, and I'd like it to charge up really fast. So I want much better batteries. But more important is if we're to build an energy system that actually is based much more on renewables, we need better storage. So here in Singapore, there's a very active program at NUS on energy storage. So that's another area I'm very excited about.
It sounded like, of all the things you talked about, one of the biggest things that we need to change, first and foremost, is mindsets of people. So that would probably be a good idea. Since we have so many young people here, you can start from a young age. Can you give any tangible examples? So what can they go home and do?
Well, look, I mean, the truth is we make daily choices constantly that have effects on our environment and energy choices, how we use water, how we use our resources, how we get to work and how we go to school, what choices we make in that respect. Do we get a big honking car that uses a lot of gasoline, or do we get a hybrid car, or do we ride mostly on mass transit, or better yet, do we walk? Right? So these are, the choices that we can make. The choices we make about how we use water have huge implications because water uses a lot of energy here in Singapore. So are we efficient in our use of water and so on? Makes a very big difference. So, those daily choices that we make, I think, are very important. But in truth, in the end, I think it is a matter of technology. That's why I think, this meeting is so important. Yes, we can ask people to try and behave better, but the truth is our cars need to be more efficient, our water use needs to be more efficient, so on. And the technology behind it is actually what I think is most critical.
Okay, show of hands. How many of you guys would, if let's say I asked you to go to what's sort of nearby, if I walked to Marina Square, right? Or if I asked you to walk to City Hall, how many of you would rather walk than take a taxi? Okay, well, some people, good job, guys. I was worried for a moment there. Right, Peter. Now, maybe as a kind of wrap-up point, can you tell us what was the thing that sparked you off, that got you interested in the sector, and what has made you stay?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, for me, it was the recognition early on in my career, almost 40 years ago, 35 years ago, 1977, that we had this huge challenge of energy. That the basic trajectory of human civilization had prospered because of energy, but now faced a great challenge of clean energy. And so it has been very much at the center of my interests, really since the mid-'70s. I had the opportunity to work in Shell for a number of years, and we took that challenge very seriously even then, as they do today. So it was really that recognition of the early on that we had this huge challenge and that it involved both great technological opportunities on the one hand, but great challenges on the other. So it has been really at the center of my interests for almost 40 years.
Wow, that's very inspiring. Now, ladies and gentlemen, can we please give a big round of applause to thank Peter? Thank you very much for sharing with us. Oh, I must tell you that one of the students here actually said that you're his role model. And we want to give you an opportunity to meet him later. I'm sure we'll introduce you. But thank you very much. If I can invite you back to your seat, please. We'll see you back up here later. Thank you very much again. All right, guys, and now it's time to hear your thoughts. So it's a warm-up first. You don't have to speak. All you have to do is use your fingers. Okay, so we're going to gather your responses to the energy sector, and there is a real-time interactive platform we have. It's called Pigeonhole Live. Okay, so what I need you to do is a bit of hand exercise. Reach into your bag or your pocket and take out your mobile phone. Giving you a chance to use your handphone, Okay, don't click WhatsApp, or Facebook. Okay, so what I need you to do is to open your mobile browser. For all the young people, people who feel young, people who are young, all welcome. So use your mobile phone and please go to this link. It's pigeonhole.at/SIEW 2014 Youth. Okay, so we're going to try it out. Once you've logged into the website, you should be brought to that page. Are you guys more or less, okay, who is already seeing that page? Oh, good. Fastest fingers. Okay, I'll give you a bit more time to type it in. Okay, show of hands again. Are you guys at the page? If you are, can you raise your hands? Okay, excellent. So now let's go through the snap poll. So we've got 4 main sectors. All right, so the first section is on energy sources. Okay, so not all the questions have right or wrong. Some of them are what are your personal thoughts. Okay, so what is Singapore's main source of fuel? Are those the answers? No. Okay, they're not the answers. Okay, let's move on to question 2. What do you think Singapore's main source of fuel will be in 2050? Okay, so you've got gas, petroleum, coal, and solar. So after Peter's talk earlier, you know what you should click. All right. Question 3, let's move along. Why is sourcing for energy a challenge for Singapore? We are a small country without any natural resources except our people. Okay, now question 4. How has Singapore overcome these challenges? Now, by the way, we'll be going through your answers with Minister later, all right? So don't, in case you have been randomly selecting A, it's not what grades you want to get, okay? It's what you think is the right answer. How has Singapore overcome these challenges? All right, let's move on. Question 5. Which 2 sectors are the top energy consumers in Singapore? Okay, so there are 3 options here. Households and industry, industry and commercial activities, household and commercial activities. So it's a permutation. Okay, I think we need to do question 4 again. Sorry guys. Let's just go back to question 4 real quick. Okay, so how has Singapore overcome the challenges for sourcing for energy? And there we go. By diversifying our energy imports. Does this mean that everybody agrees on this? No, right, okay, yeah. I was like, wow, we've got a very unified group here. All right, so let's skip along to question. You're like, I didn't answer. Oh, you can't get in. Oh, I think we're having a slight problem with the platform. Okay, let's try skipping on to question 6. Question 6, let's see if that works. How should households be encouraged to conserve energy? So there's smart meters to manage electricity use, public education, introduce energy conservation tax. That's our favorite, right? Except you young people probably don't appreciate paying taxes yet. Smart meters to manage electricity use. I think Peter's answer would be the last one, right? More information or more creation on energy-efficient appliances. All right, let's move along to question 7. What do you think Singapore should do to ensure a sustainable future? My favorite is the 3 R's. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Okay, we're coming to the end. Question 8, please. Question 8, why are renewable sources of energy important to Singapore? Now again, please choose whatever answer you feel is right, and later we'll be going through these answers with Minister. So there's renewable energy sources are more environmentally friendly, they increase our energy security. Oh, well, that was pretty funky. Oh. Okay, one more person, come on, submit an answer. Growing the renewable energy industry will help create more jobs, and Singapore can buy less energy from other sources. All right, let's move into the last section, which is probably, okay, careful what you say, Okay, now please be honest, would you, well done, champion. Oh. I'm quite excited to see if it moves one more time. Come on, guys. After? Oh, okay, so we got slightly more there. This is really quite fantastic. Okay, let's move on to the next question, question 10 first. Question 10. Which sectors within energy would interest you most as a career? Okay, so let's bring it down to be a bit more specific. We've got 5 options: clean energy, energy efficiency management, energy trading and financing. Oh, excellent. Oil and gas, power generation and utilities. Looks like clean energy, solar, wind and biomass is the most popular. Now, of course, as Peter said, you're not limited to these 5. There's a whole range of opportunities within the energy sector. All right, and can I go to can I wrap up 11 first? Is that okay? Go to 4 first, 11, then 4. All right. Okay, let's move to 11. And this one is where you can make your vote really count. What will encourage you to choose a career in the energy sector? I saw that. Did you guys see that? Good starting pay. It went zoom. All right, good career progression. Scholarship opportunity. By the way, we're giving out scholarships today, and the people giving the scholarships are here. So, scholarship opportunities. Thank you. Good starting pay and internship opportunities. Hey, internship opportunities are really important because that's where employers first look at you and identify who is like, shining star. Right? I'm getting nods. Yes. Okay, so good starting pay and career progression. Oh. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think we need to run it through briefly one more time. All right, so let's try it from the beginning. Can you guys go to question 1? Is it doable? They're like, I can't press it. Can you guys press question 1? Can you guys go back to 1? All right, let's try it one more time, okay? What is Singapore's main source of fuel? Most people have said gas. 2050 solar will be right up there, right? Okay, let's move on to question 2. Oh, right, yes. I just prophesized. What do you think Singapore's main source of fuel will be in 2050? It's nice that coal is at 0. We all right? All right. Question 3. Thanks very much for participating, guys. Question 3. Why is sourcing for energy a challenge for Singapore? Okay, so most of you have gone with A. We are a small country. So for those of you who haven't voted yet, please select your answer. Neighboring countries are not willing to sell fuel to Singapore, but we've got such good foreign relations. We are vulnerable to price fluctuations. Transporting fuel from around the world is expensive. Transporting myself around the world is also pretty expensive. All right, let's move on to question 4. So how have we overcome these challenges? Now, most people have selected by improving energy efficiency. Okay, we have another vote. So if you haven't voted, please, this is the time to press. By maintaining good relations with our neighboring countries, of course. All right, question 5. Okay, most of you have selected industry and commercial activities. So the households are great, right? All of you at home are very energy efficient. All right, question 6. How should households be encouraged to conserve energy? So most of you said, oh, wow, you guys are actually for the energy conservation tax. I'm sorry, parents. Parents are like, how much will the tax be? Okay, so once again, if you haven't voted, please select your answer. Question 7. What do you think Singapore should do to ensure a sustainable future? And Peter talked about this, sustainability, one of our largest challenges that we face. Increase energy options. I just saw someone select that. Reduce carbon emissions. Yes. Very good. All right, so let's move along to question 8. Run through all the way till the end. Yep, okay, question 8. Why are renewable sources of energy important to Singapore? So, that has gone down. So they increase our energy security. That's what most of you have selected. And the last 2 options are pretty much neck and neck at the moment. And last section of questions, question 9, I believe most of you have already answered, but let's just run through again. Would you consider a career in the energy sector? I am very happy to see it's mostly yes. Okay, question 10, which sectors interest you most? So most of you have actually said clean energy, solar, wind, and biomass. My sector is not there, but it's okay. 11, what will encourage you to choose a career in the energy sector? I'm actually quite interested to know what does career progression mean to the students, you know? Okay, so later on, maybe someone can tell us during the dialogue, what does career progression mean to you? All right, and with that, we've run through all our questions. Now, the platform will be open for a while more until about 10 a.m. So if you haven't managed to log it in, you can approach any of our organizers in case you had some issues. Hopefully you can work it out, and we really want to hear your answers because we're going to be going through them with Minister later. So thanks very much, guys, for your participation. Now we will take a short break. Yay! That's like the magic word, right? So we prepared some light refreshments for you, and it's located outside the ballroom. So do remember, right after the break, Minister will be joining us. So please put your thinking caps on. We want to have a very exciting dialogue with Peter and Minister. Do be seated back here in the ballroom before 10:20 a.m. Okay, so do be seated back here before 10:20 a.m. Thanks very much, guys. I'll see you back here in a while.